The public sector affects every aspect of life in the UK. This podcast will give you exclusive news, interviews and insights from the people responsible for building and shaping the country's future. In each episode, we'll be joined by key figures in the public sector, covering everything from the environment to the economy. Hello and welcome to Public Sector Voices, and today this is the second part of our series with Companies House, where we look at the culture of the organisation. And I'm delighted to be joined by Angela Lewis, Director of People Transformation, and Michelle Wall, Director of Finance and Commercial and Executive Lead for Equality, Diversity and Inclusion at Companies House. Hello both, how are you?
Hi, good afternoon.
Hello.
Good.
Hello. Yes, so first off, tell us a bit about yourselves. Michelle, why don't you go first?
Okay, thank you. Well, as you said, I'm Director of Finance and Commercial. I've been at Companies House now since March 2018, and I'm responsible for all aspects of the agency's financial matters, strategy, management and reporting, procurement and supplier relationship management. But I suppose the more interesting bit for this podcast is that I'm passionate about equality, diversity and inclusion, and I've been the exec champion in this area for the organisation now for probably 3 years. I suppose I've got a wide array of both private and public sector experiences, so I'm not a lifelong civil servant, but I absolutely love my role and working in public service. So over to Ange.
Oh, that's very good to hear. Yeah, and Angela, over to you.
Thanks, Chris. Thanks, Michelle. So my name is Angie Lewis, and I'm the Director for People Transformation here in Companies House. Beautiful title, beautiful role. So the role covers HR, estates, change management, continuous improvement and communication. And to me, it's a perfect combination of all those aspects that you want to get right to make sure that you are supporting your people in the organisation, but also recognising that you will only achieve success through them. So really a great role and lots of really interesting scope in it. Just in terms of a little bit about me, so my background is as a HR professional, so I've been working in HR for the last 30 odd years in the public sector in different organisations, the police service, health service, higher education sector as well, and more recently the civil service. So I've been in the organisation 10 years and joined as the head of HR and estates, and then when this opportunity came up to widen that remit, I embraced it at all opportunities and was really keen to do it. So that's a little bit about me.
Yeah, that sounds really good. And for listeners who may not have heard our previous podcast with Companies House with your colleagues, would one of you be able to tell me more about Companies House? What is it and its overall purpose? Who'd be best to answer that, or do you both want to answer that?
Companies House incorporates and dissolves limited companies. And what does that mean to people? Well, it means we register when people want to be a limited company. We register that company information and keep it up to date on the register, and we make it available to the public for free. We've got currently just over 4.8 million companies on the register, and we get about 600,000 companies registering each year. So we call it births and deaths of companies. So there are probably an equivalent number, slightly smaller number, coming off the register each year for one reason or another, and we're steadily growing. Our data supports millions of business decisions every year, and that's what the publicly, freely accessible information is all about. It really supports a whole wide range of organisations and individuals to make really good investment decisions or choose who they do business with. So it's vital, it's trustworthy and fit for purpose, and it's up to date as much as humanly possible. And I think you can't really underestimate the number of people who are accessing this information. Our data was accessed over 10.2 billion times last year on the register, which is a phenomenal number and is increasing at such a rate. When I first joined, it was less than 6 billion per annum, and in that time it is almost doubled again. It's phenomenal with the amount that is being accessed and used. So we've estimated that the annual user benefit of this data is up to about £3 billion a year for the economy, and that's why when we launched our ambitious strategy last year, which set out what we plan to do with the transformation over the next 5 years, it's really all about adding value where we can and really driving confidence in the UK economy.
And you mentioned this new strategy there for Companies House, and in the last podcast that we recorded with Companies House, we spoke to Louise Smythe, the registrar, and Martin Swain, the Director of Policy and Strategy, about this in broad terms, but could one of you tell the audience a bit more about what the strategy aims to achieve around culture?
Yeah, I'm happy to do that one, Chris. So our strategic goal here is to make sure our culture enables our brilliant people to flourish and drives high performance. It also closely aligns with efficient use of our resources as well. But in terms of the culture, this programme of culture change that we've implemented has been going on now for probably 3 to 4 years. And way back then, we looked at the culture that we had in the organisation and we focused on what we wanted to cherish. And in particular, that was around the sense of community that we had in the organisation, the absolute focus on our customers, and that real drive to do our absolute best. And then we thought about, well, what do we want to change? And so what we did as a collective organisation is come up with 3 key behaviours that we felt were fundamental to culture change, but also delivering transformation, our ambitious transformation programme. So our 3 behaviours are adaptable, bold and curious, so our ABCs. And they were chosen for really clear reasons. So the adaptability, being agile, but also recognising that change can be quite challenging for individuals and we needed them to come with us on that journey and to embrace it. The boldness, which was about constructively challenging, making sure that we were always looking to how we could make things better, and not being afraid to have a voice in the organisation, which is an absolute common thread around diversity and inclusion. And then curiosity, because actually, as Michelle mentioned there, the commitment to drive confidence in the UK economy, as an organisation and a culture, we felt we really had to be looking and anticipating what's happening, what's not just internally, what's happening across the UK, what's happening globally in relation to the work we do. And so those are those 3 sort of cornerstones of our culture. And if I just fast forward now, 4 years later, what we've got is a thriving culture change community, about 400 people involved in our community of change and culture, and near 29 networks in the organisation. And when I talk about people networks, these are groups of people who come together to talk about and take action on the things they're passionate about, but also to make sure that they have a connection to others. So I'll just give you an example for it. We have working families networks, we have a women's network, we have a bereavement network, we have a coaching network. So they are hugely diverse, the types of groups that are meeting regularly. But their common goal is about helping us to achieve that strategic goal of a high-performing organisation. And that essence is that everyone can bring their whole self to work, that you don't separate out from what you are at home and all the skills, and that you're able to bring that into the workplace, and therefore we will see you flourish as a result. And actually what we've seen in relation to that goal is continual improvement. We were really fortunate last year to be awarded Investors in People Platinum recognition, which is only given to a very small percentage of organisations, and most definitely that was in recognition of the huge progress we've made around making sure people have a true voice in the organisation, but also that they don't feel that they are done unto, that they are really truly part of the change.
I was going to say that I would agree wholeheartedly with that. It is about that inclusion piece, and I think we'll come to that in a minute.
Yeah, it seems like a great place to work, and it seems like the employees are really involved and encouraged to be themselves, which can only be a benefit not just to the employees but to the organisation as a whole. Would you agree to that?
Yes, absolutely. And I think that inclusion piece is absolutely critical to our success as an organisation and as teams within that organisation. I think it's really important that we've got that safe environment for all staff to be engaging in some really thought-provoking conversations. As Ange said, we've got a huge amount of change to deliver over the next few years, and I think really having that ability to speak and put your thoughts forward and get involved in those things is absolutely critical. But I think it's not just in relation to the day-to-day work as you would see it in terms of change and our interactions with us as sort of individuals and colleagues. I think one of the key things that I've seen in terms of the change over the last couple of years and it's only growing is that fundamental shift in thinking about equality, diversity, inclusion to become an integral part of our policy development and our service delivery. In the time that I've been working at Companies House, there's an element in our legislative reform that is linked to the trans community, which is something that we've been working really closely with lots of different areas in the country to try and get a good resolution to the challenges that we face there. And also, I think we've got some of our networks engaged with dealing with our policy and operational delivery colleagues, where companies with names which could be seen to be problematic in terms of the rules and how they get a good understanding of what that means in a specific community or particular sector of our community, to really understand and make really good quality decisions when we're making sort of policy decisions around whether a name is acceptable on the register or not. There's some really interesting work that they've been doing there, and that just shows how those networks, whilst they are supportive of each other and they're helping provide support for people so that they can bring their whole selves to work, and if they're having a bad day they've got somewhere they can go and connect, they're also really driving that high performance of Companies House as an organisation.
We hear a lot about organisational culture in different companies across different sectors, but what makes Companies House stand out and makes it special when it comes to this organisational culture?
I mean, it's unique. I think I gave you that reference to my experience elsewhere, and having worked in numerous other organisations, the absolute core of the organisation is that no one group has more power or authority over another. So even though you may say the civil service is quite a hierarchical structure, in Companies House, it really genuinely does not feel like one voice is heard louder than another. And that point about everybody's voice counts, and that, we have professions, we have colleagues who work in different parts of the organisation. We're a frontline delivery organisation. Every voice counts, and that's the bit that makes it special, I think, Chris. But alongside that, and I know Michelle will agree with this, we've seen this huge progress in terms of confidence across the organisation. I can remember a couple of years ago suggesting to colleagues that they hid their light under a bushel, that we were a little bit humble, and that's, often civil service organisations may feel that they are humble and that you can't compare yourself to the private sector. And so we really asked people to be proud of what they were doing, but also to be innovative and creative. And so we saw things such as Ideas Hub being developed, where people started to put forward their ideas, and we saw real change as a result of those. Tiny changes, but people making those changes and suggesting things. We saw colleagues then being really confident about acting as our brand ambassadors. And I know that sounds a bit sort of, what do you mean? But colleagues writing blogs every week about something that mattered to them, but also being willing to promote the organisation, being passionate about the organisation, featuring in all our campaigns. We never have to find actors to feature in our campaigns. There are people queuing up to represent the organisation, and that sense of pride, but also that sense of being part of something bigger, is probably the bit that makes it the most special, and yes, very, very unique in terms of anything I've ever seen before.
Yeah, that does sound really impressive, and it sounds like the staff at Companies House are really invested in the future of the organisation as well, which can only benefit everyone.
Yes, and I think that employer brand campaign that Angie mentioned earlier is just the tip of the iceberg, but some of the stories that came out in that, people took their own photographs to put onto social media around, with different blogs and different stories about them as individuals. We've had kind of This Is Me kind of campaigns, and really understanding everybody's got stuff going on at home, stuff going on in their lives that isn't just work, and being able to bring that to work, and actually it being of benefit and value to the organisation, that you've had all these different other experiences, or are having all these different experiences, make you the person that you are, give you a different insight to the next person along on the next desk, is something that's really special. And I think we've won awards for that employer brand campaign in terms of, one, the look and feel, because it did look beautiful, but also the stories that were going behind it. And that, it, as you say, it wasn't It wasn't, they were photographs of people in the organisation and their families and things that they were doing outside of work, which was really lovely and gave you a real sense of connection, I think, both to the organisation and to them.
Yeah, that sounds really impressive. And obviously over the past 2 years we've been dealing with COVID-19, and it's been a difficult time for many people. And how has Companies House dealt with this and supported its staff through these challenging, unprecedented times?
Well, we often talk, Chris, it was that it will be over after a year, or it'll be over after 6 months and then a year. And, it has been, for us as every other organisation, immensely challenging. But I think the fact that we had done the groundwork prior to that, I said to you about the networks we already had in place, these opportunities and forums for people to connect regularly, helped us greatly. So at the beginning of the pandemic, we had our mantra, which was do what you can when you can. And that really, our workforce embraced and accepted that, and actually did way more. They went above and beyond, because actually that pressure of, oh my goodness, how am I going to manage to continue to do my day job whilst looking after my children or whatever it might be. So we really saw that response. But also we can't forget, we had a core of about 100 people who continue to come into our office every single day. That hasn't stopped throughout the pandemic. We relied on them to do that sort of core business that couldn't be done at home, and they did it with good grace. They did it positively. They supported each other, and that was our balance between 90% of the workforce being at home, 10% being in our offices, and making sure we really balanced that to make sure we were sympathetic and empathetic to whatever was going on for people. And Michelle's point there about people truly did bring their whole selves to work because they had no choice. That positioning of the networks we already had just has grown. I think since the pandemic began, we've had an additional sort of 6 or 7 networks started, and they're growing. And I think that point about our commitment again was that nobody would feel alone, no one would feel isolated, and that we were a community that would look out for each other has again been one of those key points around making sure that we're checking in regularly, that they are supported by their managers, that our managers are getting support to know how to lead in this very different way in a remote working and hybrid, and all of that essence of the pandemic, and keeping people motivated when the world around them is very uncertain. We've set up a sort of very regular sort of communications channel. Louise, our chief exec, does a weekly update. There was numerous opportunities to talk with us as an exec team. We took every opportunity to keep the conversations going, because a real part of who we were was about our physical presence together. And so our biggest anxiety when the pandemic started and went on for some time was we'd lose who we were. But actually we haven't lost it. It's stronger. We have to keep working at it. But that strength of you are connected, we are all working for the same common goal, is right at the heart of what we've responded. And hopefully our customers feel that we really responded and gave them the services that they need, but also that we were empathetic and understanding of some of the challenges they were going through. But as we know, it's still going on, and we continue to respond appropriately.
I think in the last podcast I was saying to Louise and Martin, Companies House really came to the fore during the pandemic. People really realised what an important organisation they are. So that must have been really good for the staff to know, we were part of helping people through the pandemic, but they also knew that they were being helped by their employers as well.
I think so. It's hard to even think back that far now, isn't it? And just to try and remember what it was like at the time. But I mean, those first few weeks and months of the pandemic, and looking at what easements we could put into place, and we had some legislation go through for some of it, where some of it was done in a more informal way to support and help our customers. But I think that really understanding our customers, again, that's another really important part of Companies House, I think, is that real kind of connection with our customers as well, really understanding who they are, what they need from us, and being really focused on that to ensure that we did put easements in the right place for them, that we kept some aspects of it as strict as it ever was, because that was equally important to ensuring that the economy would keep functioning in the way that it needed to. I think was a key part of those early days. And as Ange says, some of them are still in place. Some of them they ebb and flow, I think is how I would describe it at the moment. It's a constant watching game.
Yeah, and equality, diversity and inclusion, ED&I, it's an important topic in the workplace. So why is it so important for Companies House to have a diverse workforce? What are the benefits to this for the organisation?
Well, I think that there's a well documented business case, if you like. As a finance director, I should always mention that there's a well documented business case for having diversity in your workforce. But I think really getting under that and what that means is really important. And for us, it's really about having all those different ideas and really looking for all those different insights that lead to the great innovation and creative solutions. As Ange mentioned earlier, lots of change and thought-provoking conversations going on in the organisation, and we want lots of different ideas coming to that table. We want to be really understanding what our customers want, what the community at large wants, what we need as an organisation, and really looking at all those different ways of working and ideas. But I think it's equally important not just to be diverse, but to have that equality and inclusion aspects as well. Those for me are the things. It's people talk about some of it's being sat at the table, some people's being able to coming to the dance, and then other people's being allowed to dance, and all those kinds of analogies. I think from my perspective, it's really about that whole inclusion piece as well, bringing all those different people into the organisation and different types of people into the organisation, and really driving that great innovation, because people will come along and go, oh, I had never thought of it in that way, and come up with their ideas, and being really open to new ideas and conversations to make things different. Would you agree, Ange?
Absolutely, Michelle. And I think one of the reasons that we set ourselves a public target last year was to increase the number of applications from underrepresented groups by 10%, and then this year we achieved that, and then this year it was, well, actually it's fine to get the applications, but what we really want to see is new colleagues joining us. So we set ourselves the target of increasing our actual appointments by 10%, and we've already met that and exceeded it this year. And that's again partly because we've reached out to much wider audiences. Again, our networks are really representing the types of range of different people that we want in the organisation across every underrepresented group. But it's also that reinforcing message, as Michelle talked about inclusion, respect, being valued, our commitment to eradicating bullying and harassment. We were delighted this year with the People survey to see that there was a reduction in the numbers of very small numbers of people who were feeling bullied or harassed in relation to their work. Because again, if that's the type of ethos and the organisation you will give a better customer service. At the end of the day, we don't just do this because we're lovely people. We do this because we're a business and we have to provide exceptional services to our customers. And you can only do that if you have highly motivated, highly skilled colleagues who represent the communities you serve. So to us, it's just an evolving conversation. Equality, diversity, inclusion isn't something that sits over there. It's right at the heart of the culture change. And I think that's probably why it's going very well. Alongside that, Michelle is my sort of champion on the board. It's my day job, if you see what I mean, from a HR perspective, but having a champion and a sponsor that comes from a different lens, finance, there is an element that raises it to show that it's not just a HR thing.
I think it is important, and I think that role in itself has developed quite considerably. When I first took it on, we had our diversity forum, I think we called it, which was a group of people who would come together who were equally passionate. And one of our key things was to get some more networks up and running. At the time, we had a women's network that was kind of half going and not an awful lot else. And as Ange says, in 4 years, we've now got 29 networks and people-led groups, which is just like phenomenal. And they've really become very, very self-driven, for want of a better phrase. They go off and they're doing their things, which meant our forum kind of lost its way a little bit, because it was like, well, we haven't got anything left to do. The networks are all doing the things that we were doing previously. We don't need to be doing communications about how great some of this stuff is, or talking to the business about why this is important. They're off doing it on a daily basis. So we've changed that slightly, and I now chair a equality, diversity and inclusion steering group. Angie's team put together, with our input, a equality, diversity and inclusion strategy with some specific goals, and we see now now our role as the steering group to really look at how we're developing in terms of that, and to really get under the skin in the business about how that's making a change, and if it's making a change, and if it's not, why not, and to really get so that we've got huge, that inclusion piece is demonstrably getting better. We want to see some data on it. I'm on Angie's case all the time. Where's your data on that? What do you mean? How do you know that? What about this? And I've had some feedback on that, and we're really starting to develop now that kind of critical friend, if that's the right phrase, relationship in this space, where I hold my exec colleagues to account, and where we look at it and we say, well, that's our strategy, yeah, but what are we actually doing tangibly? What are we doing to make people's lives better, to make people's lives different, and to continue that real drive for excellence in this space?
Question for you both. So as public sector leaders and as individuals, why is organisational culture and equality, diversity and inclusion important to you both? We'll start with Angela first.
Yeah, I mean, it's always been important, Chris, but never more so than now. And for me, again, this is about personally being part of an organisation. It's that sense that I can also be my true self. So I'm a member of the Cancer Network. I've had cancer myself, so I'm a part of that community. I sponsor the Ability Network because I live with a long-term health condition. I sponsor the Mental Health Networks. It's about those areas which are separate to my role. They're about those areas that I feel a fundamental connection to, and I will continue to promote and advocate for whatever I'm doing. But the opportunity to do it in an organisation where actually it's the norm and it's expected that senior leaders are actively involved in whatever network it may be, and that you're an active member of those, is the bit that really gets across to me that we're not just playing lip service to something. I have worked in places where it does feel like it's a bit mechanistic. Equality and diversity, inclusion, we're doing that. But when you're living, breathing it, and you are part of these groups, and you can see the difference, and actually not just the difference, but the passion to make a difference, that's the essence of it for me, I think. And I think any high performing organisation has to embrace and commit to equality, diversity and inclusion. Otherwise they will fail. Because it's the essence of a high performing organisation, and it's the essence of helping people to do their best work. Alongside that, you also want to make sure you've got an environment where people have fun, they enjoy what they're doing, they work really hard, but they also enjoy it, and they get a sense of enjoyment and community. I think they would be the key bits for me.
And Michelle?
Yeah, so I like Ange. I think I want to work in an environment where I can come and be myself as well. I'm a working mum with one of them's relatively small. He's only 9, and I think I want to be able to come to work and be able to talk about, actually one of them's not well and I need to go off and sort something out now, and be able to be confident that I've got that kind of understanding that we've all got lives, and sometimes they might impact on how you are on any particular day. But I also think, I've worked in some quite male-oriented environments, both in terms of finance can, in some industries, be quite male-dominated, and also I've worked in some quite male-dominated industries. So I think understanding how it can feel to be a little bit as a smaller number in a group, and the impact that can have on you is really important to me. So I don't want anyone to feel like I've felt over the years, or treated in some respects like I've been treated over the years. So I think I'm really passionate that everyone can bring themselves to work and be completely open and honest about who they are, to enable them to be the best that they can, and I would hope that my teams would back me on that. But I think I'm really passionate in this space, not just for my team but for myself as well. I think it's it's really important that we can all come to work and be happy.
As public sector leaders, it must be really good for employees of Companies House to look up to you. Obviously, you both mentioned your experience, your lived experience, so that must give them the drive to speak out and to discuss issues that they may have.
Yeah, I think so. I'm the exec lead and attend the Menopause Society, and I did have some feedback the other day about people liking the fact that I do come along to some of those meetings to see how everyone's getting on. And I said, it's probably the 1 hour a quarter probably that I feel like one of the girls, not the boss.
On to the final question. I'll start with you, Michelle. So what is your favourite thing about your role at Companies House?
I think my favourite thing about Companies House is the fact that you can just make such a big difference to people's day. I think I really enjoy coming to work. I love the culture, and I never thought I would say this. I worked in an organisation previously where I loved it and I never thought I'd leave, and then an opportunity comes along and you do. And I was astounded when I came to a Companies House at just how fabulous an environment it was to work in, how supportive it was, but also how challenging, but in a fun way, it was. And I have loved every moment of it.
And Angela?
I did a big welcome last week to some new starters. There was quite a few of them, Chris, and I always say the favourite bit about the role, well, for me about the role, is that I get to exposure to everybody in the organisation, which I think is always wonderful. And actually everybody is a new colleague to meet. There's a new person to engage with and interact with. And actually, you know, the favourite bit as well is that actually this major change we're going through, the legislation that's coming, the transformation programme, it's energising, it's exciting. So I think that makes a difference. But also, you know, I've worked places where it's like dragging teeth to get people to support and work with you on major change programs. So here I turn up for a culture community session and there's 200 people on a call and they're engaging with us and chatting to us. We do business plan sessions twice a year and to the whole organisation, and the conversations, the connections, you cannot, honestly, you just can't beat that sense of community and ultimately that sense of being part of something that's bigger than you, but also you want to be part of. It's unique, and that's definitely, without a doubt, unique and special, and very, very proud to work here.
Angela, Michelle, thank you very much for joining us on Public Sector Voices, and be sure to join us next time to hear more about Companies House. If you enjoyed today's podcast and discussions, don't forget to like and subscribe, or give us a rating on whatever streaming service you're using. Thanks for listening. See you next time.